profoundly disagreed with that. Here's what he says. Their slight notions of the guilt and evil of sin reveal an utter lack of all suitable reverence for the divine majesty. This principle of divine majesty is justly termed in Scripture the beginning of wisdom. Fear of God, reverence for the divine majesty is the beginning of wisdom. And then he drew out, you can't build a nation on folly. You must have wisdom. And to disregard God as what makes sin sin is the opposite of wisdom and therefore the opposite of the good of the nation. That's the kind of pragmatist he was. He was a radically God-centered activist. I could give you many illustrations here. I'll skip over because I have 30 pages and can only do 15. So I'll leave out my dueling illustration. Let's talk about his early life for a minute. But all these will be in the manuscript. August 24, 1759, he was born in Hull, England. His father died when he was 9. He was sent by his mother to live with an uncle and aunt. They happened to be evangelical. She didn't realize how evangelical. They sent him to an evangelical boarding school. She saw him becoming a Methodist. Horrors. She pulled him out of that boarding school. She was high church Anglican, afraid that he was going to get infected by this enthusiasm in England, and sent him off to a different school where he proceeded to become a pagan, which he was for the next 20 years. He said in school that he did nothing at all. He was very bright, and therefore he didn't have to do anything at all, like some of the schools my children have gone to. Didn't have to do anything, which is why we're killing our kids in the cities. They said to my son Benjamin, just show up and you'll pass. That's what it had fallen to at Roosevelt High. He went to St. John's College, Cambridge, and there he proceeded to do nothing but party. He was very wealthy. His father had left a lot of money behind. He got an allowance from his mom, and therefore he didn't have to do anything. And he didn't do anything significant, except make friends with William Pitt, who was his exact same age. And at age 21, on a lark, they said, let's run for Parliament. They had infinite resources. He spent £8,000 and won the election at age 21. William Pitt did too, and in 4 years, William Pitt was the Prime Minister of England at age 25. It was just incredible what Providence was up to here. Because these guys did not deserve anything they got. They were just a bunch of lechers partying around thinking, cool, let's run for Parliament. That was 1780, and he stayed in Parliament until he died. 50-year investment in the politics of England. And he began as a Parliament person, his late-night, party-loving, upper-class, unbeliever lifestyle. He was single, he liked it that way, and he stayed that way till he was 37 years old. And then he met Barbara, April 15, 1797. And he fell in love and married her 2 weeks later. She was a believer, and by that time he was, which means I've skipped over the most important event of his life. So let's go back and figure out how God did this. How did William Wilberforce become a Christian? What did God do to take this fella and turn him into the force for justice that he was in England for Christ for so many decades. Well, the way Parliament worked is that they took 2 long recesses, 2 or 3 months each. And all these wealthy office holders just went to the French Riviera or went back home and hobnobbed around. And so he usually went with his sister and his mother over to France during the winter holiday. And he decided on a lark to invite Isaac Milner along. Isaac Milner, he had known in grammar school. Fun guy, had gone on, was teaching at Queen's College, Cambridge. Thought, I'll renew my old friendship with Isaac Milner. Says, go with my mom and my sister and me to the French Riviera in October. We'll come back in February. And on the boat across the channel, he finds out the guy's an evangelical Christian. He had become a Christian. Blew all of his stereotypes. He didn't act like what he thought a typical Methodist or Whitfieldian or Newtonian was supposed to be like. And they got into endless conversations about biblical doctrine. Then, as though by mistake, and nothing is by mistake, they're in his house, ready to head home. Several months later, on the coffee table in this house is a book. Wilberforce picks it up, and it is The Rise and Progress of Religion in the Soul by Philip Doddridge. Never heard of it. So he shows it to Milner. He says, ever heard of this book? Milner says, one of the best books ever written. Bring it along. Let's read it to each other in the carriage on the way home. Across France, across the channel, and home, which is what they did. They read the book to each other. Wilberforce said, February 1785 now, that when he reached Parliament, he had become an intellectually believing Christian. Not a Christian yet. He did not believe, but he affirmed the doctrine. That's where he had come. Milner had answered all of his questions. He had seen enough coherence and enough reasonableness, as far as he judged reasonableness, that he was going to sign on intellectually, which of course won't change anybody's life, right? And so he went right back into his lifestyle, except that God had not finished with him. So along came the summer recess, and he invited Milner again to be with him. And they talked endlessly until the great change, that's what he called it, the great change happened. And he repented and put his faith in Jesus. And one of the first effects, they're in France, they were in France again. One of the first effects was to make him loathe his wealth. And what he had done with it all these years. It says he felt a contempt for his wealth and the luxury in which he had lived on all these trips between parliamentary sessions. And in its place came a passion for the poor and the downtrodden and whoever lacked and seemed to have no access. He was bemoaning, in addition, his idleness. He had been idle. He had just played between parliamentary sessions for those few years. 4 of them. He's 25 now. So for 4 years, he just watched himself fritter his life away. And now he was so ashamed and wanted to make it right. And he was terrified. He uses the word tormented by whether or not he could stay a politician. So where did he go for counsel? To find out He's a brand new